If you've ever wanted to experience the ancient Maya world for yourself, well, I have an incredible opportunity for you, because Tales from Aztlantis is teaming up with the fine folks at the Skeptoid podcast to bring you the mysteries of the Maya adventure. This December, I will be joining Skeptoid Adventures as your guide for the mysteries of the Maya. We're going to travel through the Yucatan, exploring remarkable archaeological sites, uncovering the real history behind the Maya civilization, and separating fact from fiction along the way. Together, we'll examine the archaeology, history, and culture of one of the world's greatest civilizations through the lens of evidence, not sensationalism. To reserve your spot, all you need is a fully refundable $500 deposit. Your deposit is refundable through August 1st, so you can reserve your place with confidence. After August 1st, deposits become non-refundable. Even better, if you heard about the trip from the Tales from Aztlantis podcast, be sure to use the promo code Kurly in the How Did You Hear About This Adventure field when you sign up, and you will get a $200 discount. And if you're feeling extra adventurous, you can combine the Maya adventure with the New Orleans escapade and receive $500 off when you reserve both trips. Just visit skeptoid.com/adventures to learn more and reserve your spot. I hope that you will join me this December as we explore the mysteries of the Maya together.
You must excuse me. I've grown quite weary.
This hasn't been easy, I know. But you've learned a lesson. A lesson in honesty. Honesty to yourself and honesty to others. That lesson will stand you in good stead all your life.
I think we've all learned a good lesson. I've always heard that honesty is the best policy. Now I'm catching on to why that's so, and why that's so, and why that's so.
Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome to Tales from Aztlantis, where we take you on a journey through Chicano, Mexicano, and Mesoamerican history and archaeology, and along the way, we challenge pseudo-historical distortions, and we confront the disinformation that too often surrounds these very topics. We are your hosts, Kurly Tlapoyawa.
And Ruben Arellano, Tlakatekatl.
How are you doing today, Dr. Tlakatekatl?
How am I doing? Hey, it's we're in the middle of the dog days of summer. So over here in Dallas, we're hitting the triple digits, 100 plus. Man. And so just enjoying every single minute of it. About to go to the pool here in a little bit and try to get freshened up.
Well, you guys ran into some weather on your way home, right?
Yeah, we did.
From Albuquerque.
So we had an interesting trip. We, as you mentioned, we were in Albuquerque recently. We spent the 4th of July over with you and your family, and so thank you for having us over and for letting us spend some good times with you in a good way.
In a good way, like that.
And visiting the Pueblo Center in downtown and going to families' homes and just having a good time. But on the way back, we experienced some very severe downpours coming through the Panhandle and a little bit of hail. And it looked like we were going to get maybe a tornado in the distance, but it dissipated. So it was just just some good rain, because Tlaloc provides. And so it's a welcome. It's a welcome rain. Speaking of welcome, we want to welcome our guest today, right?
Yes, absolutely. Today, dear listeners, we are joined by Joseph M. Yracheta. Joseph is an Amerindigenous scientist of Purépecha and Rarámuri at the Native BioData Consortium, which exists within the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation of South Dakota. Mr. Yracheta has been a scientist since 1990, where he has started as a bench biotechnician and worked across many biomedical disciplines. Mr. Yracheta believes that all data and resources must be seen as unforeseen futures where their value will constantly change. He feels this data must be secured for indigenous economic and cultural sustainability. So welcome, Joe. Do we call you Joe or Joseph? Or Yracheta? What do you prefer?
Just don't call me late for tamales.
And I left this out because I wanted to make it its own little separate thing, but you are with the Native BioData Consortium, which does a lot of good work. I'm looking at the website right now, and it says that Native Bio is dedicated to improving indigenous health through research while building capacity in data science and genomics for Native communities. The organization ensures that all genetic and health data is collected and stored with full respect for tribal ownership and control, which I think is extremely important, especially these days where everybody's fishing for our data. It used to be they were just fishing for data points online, right? And now they're getting into our very blood and trying to extract that resource from us. So thank you for all the work you do. And I'm super stoked to have you on the show, man. Welcome.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thanks. Man. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here, you guys. Joe's fine. And I just want to make sure before we start that you guys are both Mexica, Nahuatl, Chicanos. I'm a Purépecha. I hope that you don't scalp me or anything like
Fights
that.
Fights are gonna break out.
Don't forget the Coahuiltecan.
Yeah, Coahuiltecan. And you and I probably connect through our Rarámuri heritage, Joe. So we're all good. We're all going to kumbaya it.
That's right.
Here.
We're going to do pan-Indianism.
We're going to practice some pan-Indianism here on Tales from Aztlantis. Somebody's going to clip just that part. And they're going to be like, these fucking guys.
Well, so that's an interesting thing because I've been following you guys for a while, and Kurly, especially when he wrote the book We Rise way back in the 90s. But then we have this other connection through Dr. Jennifer Raff and her book. I didn't know you guys were editors. I was asked to be an editor on that book, and I didn't find out till after the book was published that you guys were part of that too. So.
Yeah, it was cool when that book came out to see your name listed in there as well.
I was like, they got this dude in there? Oh, man.
So shout out Jennifer Raff.
Yeah, shout out.
She needs to put out another book, man, because the field, your guys' field, changes so quickly and
Does
rapidly.
She have new research out that needs to be published?
She's working on a second book, yeah.
Is she?
Okay. Is she? Nice.
We also know each other through Patricia Gonzalez and Roberto Rodriguez.
Really?
Because he was at the UW-Madison when I was there, and so when they were still married, they were our friends. Mm-hmm.
We are all connected, as the ancestors would say.
Is it what is it? Not Hunaku, is it Hunaku or no? Inlakech, right?
Inlakech mitakuyo yasin, right?
This is going to be a show about just nothing but indigenous sayings.
Aphorisms.
What is your favorite one, Joe? What's your go-to?
Yeah.
Is it a ho? I think you were saying a ho.
Well, the one I've been fighting with lately with friends on social media is they're like, Meshikayot. And I'm like, no, it's Huchari. It's Huchari Winapikwa. That's what it's supposed to be.
That's fired. So for our audience, Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself, like your story, where you came from, what got you into the work that you're doing right now, because it's fascinating work. Like, what was the path that led you to this point in your life?
Well, I was born a little poor brown child. Far, far away from Mexico. So I don't know, depending on how you count. So I'm either third or second generation American. I don't know, because my family came over in 1910 during the Mexican Revolution. Because the people don't know this, that they were recruited from the Altiplano to break the strikes in the Midwest. So Chicago, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, Indiana. That's all where my family came to in 1910. And we were there to break up the union strikes and work at the stockyards and the steel mills and the bird's eye packaging plants, all that kind of stuff. And I guess that's kind of where my story starts, is because my mom, even though she only had an 8th grade education and my dad wasn't much more educated than her, we're all very much proud about being who they were. And so she's like, if anybody ever asks you at school what you are, tell them you're American. If they ask a second time, tell them you're American. If they ask a third time, say you're Mexican American. If they ask a fourth time, say you're Mexican. If they ask a fifth time, just say we were here first. So,
Nice.
and our neighborhood was mostly Black and Puerto Rican. And so, and Puerto Ricans and other Latinos didn't like us Mexicans because we look like this. And so we had to fight that as well, the sort of lateral violence with the other Latinos. So that just kind of translated into my later education when I went to college. And I was trying to be an MD, a physician, but I decided I didn't like that. So I got into research and did that for a while, all kinds of research. And then I had an accident in the lab where I couldn't be there anymore because I'd have really bad asthma and allergies. So I taught high school on reservations for a while. And then I got back into science through genetics because most of that stuff is just water-based. So I didn't have to deal with any bad chemicals or anything like that. And so I went to UW Seattle, got a master's in pharmacogenomics, came back here to the res, and I don't know if you guys know UW Seattle very well, but back in 2009 through 2014, it was like this indigenous renaissance. It didn't matter if you were from New Zealand or Hawaii or Alaska or Latin America, everybody was just like, we need to do something. Like, we need to do something together. So it didn't matter what discipline they were in. They were all like, we're gonna help these urban kids, whether they're Latino or Hawaiian or Mexican. We're gonna help them. We're gonna go around and spread all this policy stuff. We worked from British Columbia all the way down to Northern California, is trying to spread this message of indigenous data sovereignty. And so when I came back to the res, I'm like, we need a physical location. We need a brick and mortar place. And I start working on it when I got back here in 2014. And that's how Native Bio was born.
It's an actual physical location that you have.
Yeah.
And what is the main work that your organization does?
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you've ever wanted to experience the ancient Maya world for yourself, well, I have an incredible opportunity for you, because Tales from Aztlantis is teaming up with the fine folks at the Skeptoid podcast to bring you the mysteries of the Maya adventure. This December, I will be joining Skeptoid Adventures as your guide for the mysteries of the Maya. We're going to travel through the Yucatan, exploring remarkable archaeological sites, uncovering the real history behind the Maya civilization, and separating fact from fiction along the way. Together, we'll examine the archaeology, history, and culture of one of the world's greatest civilizations through the lens of evidence, not sensationalism. To reserve your spot, all you need is a fully refundable $500 deposit. Your deposit is refundable through August 1st, so you can reserve your place with confidence. After August 1st, deposits become non-refundable. Even better, if you heard about the trip from the Tales from Aztlantis podcast, be sure to use the promo code Kurly in the How Did You Hear About This Adventure field when you sign up, and you will get a $200 discount. And if you're feeling extra adventurous, you can combine the Maya adventure with the New Orleans escapade and receive $500 off when you reserve both trips. Just visit skeptoid.com/adventures to learn more and reserve your spot. I hope that you will join me this December as we explore the mysteries of the Maya together.
Now we are a safe harbor. We store samples and data within the tribe's legal jurisdiction and geographic border. So Cheyenne River is about the size of Connecticut. It's 5,500 square miles or so. And we are smack dab in the middle. So if they start coming, we're going to have at least an hour to 90 minutes notice if they're coming, and we'll just burn the place down.
When you talk about biodata, right? This is a word that you see a lot in the news and social media. But for a layperson, if you had to tell them, like, how would you define biodata exactly?
So biodata is anything, because of, well, you guys probably know because you're in academia since 1941, the publish or perish, anything that can be commercially applicable, right? So it could be plant medicine, it could be agricultural products, it could be things that produce antibiotics like fungi, slime molds, bacteria, whatever that's in the soil or found someplace else. It's human DNA, it's animal DNA, it's all kinds of stuff. And so at least since 2007 with the America Competes Act, data has been on the radar for the United States in terms of sort of bioproperty. And so the difference in how research has been conducted since, say, 1995 or so, is that almost all of the legislation and funding is tied to commercial applicability. And so this whole open data thing that began the conversation late 90s got codified in 2013 and then got mandated in 2023 under the Biden administration has all been working up towards taking these new technologies where we can extract different biomolecules and DNA from things and turning it into products.
Mm-hmm.
And does this include weaponization, or is it all medical purposes?
The weaponization thing was hidden for a long time, but now it's just out in the open. It's just whether it's biosurveillance, biometrics, tracking people across space and time, or trying to make some sort of gene-edited bomb. I don't know if you guys, back in the G.W. Bush thing with the Center for a New American Century or whatever it was called. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Donald,
remember that.
Yeah, Donald Rumsfeld. They had this
Mm-hmm.
whole like Project 2025 booklet. It was online and everybody was reading it. They took it off, but it said in there, it's like the only way the United States is going to be able to compete is to start collecting all of this DNA and starting preparing and being the first ones to make these weapons because we know other people are going to do it.
Goddamn. It's very bleak. It's very dystopian, children of men type shit right there. So when it comes to indigenous DNA in particular, right? Why is it important that we as Native people protect our DNA specifically? And what is the obsession with collecting this DNA from these outside forces?
Well, that's what, you guys are smart academics too. So I kind of want your take on it, especially with this whole mestizaje thing that we're always kind of embedded in and fighting for our indigeneity. So if we go back to colonial times, a friend of mine tested all the turkeys on the planet, and guess where they come from? They come from Mexico. So even though indigenous people domesticated turkeys more than once or utilized them more than once, the ones that are valuable and commercially available are the Mexican turkeys, the ones that our ancestors domesticated. So that's trackable through time and space. We got nothing for it, right? And you can do that for anything. You can do that for corn. You can do that for chocolate, tomatoes, avocados, especially chocolate, because chocolate doesn't grow well in the Americas anymore because it's attacked by all these European viruses and bacteria and stuff. So they had to move it to Africa and Southeast Asia. But the way that they propagate it is not through seed, but through cuttings. But now those cuttings are, just so many cuttings over centuries, they're just not viable anymore. And they're getting attacked. So they've come back to Latin America to look for wild varieties or varieties that have been only used by indigenous people. So in that context, we've always been utilized by European colonialism to feed the world. Like we didn't directly do that. They took it from us. And then they used it like the Irish potato famine, corn in Africa, and other products in Southeast Asia. They were able to, the way they say is, we raised all boats. We took the world out of poverty, but the world was doing fine before they came. Then they impoverished them. And they're like, oh, well, now how are we going to feed them because we need them to do work for us? Oh, we have all of these crops from the Americas that grow anywhere. So now we can make this army of slaves. And then, so anyway, that's where we're at right now, is the same thing. Is they're looking for these new products from us that have not yet been described or commercialized. And because this is a unique space for humans, right? If you believe the out of Africa theory, there was no humans here. And then we came in very small populations. We were bottlenecked. So we adapted crazily fast to this place.
Yeah.
We
and to
we should have died.
Speaking of the bottleneck, so that creates this diversity, right? Within, like, phenotypically as well, with amongst indigenous people, and genetically, there's all this variation because of these bottlenecks of populations, or the Beringian standstill, right? Where people were kind of isolated up there by what would be Alaska today, for this enough long of a time that their DNA, that they evolved as people. And then when they finally come in to what is now the Americas proper, the people who were already there, who had come in like through the coastlines, they were diverse. They were different enough from each other that is distinguishable, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So that's the thing, is that the things that were popular, say in the 90s when DNA first was being used, were people with Mendelian diseases like Tay-Sachs disease or sickle cell disease or brittle bone disease or hemophilia, right? They're like, oh, we can take these very, tragic and odd people and turn them into money. But that didn't happen. It was too hard to do that because those mutations are lethal, right? They're really hard to turn into money. And so then they started going to people like the Amish and island populations in the Pacific and saying, oh, this is where we can turn stuff into money. Or even Scandinavia. Scandinavia has a specific cholesterol variant that allows them not to be infected by HIV, right? And so, I think it's like 18% of the population has it. But the way that is, it's a lipid, and so they couldn't turn it into anything. So now they're like, where can we get a lot of people that are different, genetically homogenous, over 2 continents, over 40,000 years? Oh, the Americas.
Yeah. And not through some altruistic purpose, right? Because they have dollar signs in their eyes, and they're like, where can we go looking for the next gold mine of information that we could monetize?
Yeah. And so with the Amish, that story, the University of Maryland and Regeneron, the pharma company, they did something groundbreaking. In 2 years, they genetically sequenced all 450 members of the Amish community in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They got from them genetic variants in a specific gene that helped them create 3 different blockbuster anti-cholesterol drugs. And each drug's going to make anywhere between $10 to $20 million a year for the next 10 years. And they're giving the Amish nothing.
Yeah.
So
that's fucking cold.
I'm trying to understand how a community like the Amish, how do these companies come in and convince them to participate in these kinds of things? Or is it done through nefarious means where the community doesn't really know what's happening, or it's done behind their back where they have no knowledge of this happening? And because we're just looking at the Amish, that's just kind of a microcosm of what's also happening to indigenous communities throughout the Americas, right? Even though the Amish aren't indigenous, they're treated like an indigenous group because they're so isolated and so insular, right? And so they kind of form a perfect example of what a European quote unquote native community might look like, right?
Yeah.
So what's going on there?
There's 2 things. One, Kurly already mentioned, is this altruistic intent, right? They go after some sort of sentimental hook, right? You have cancer, you have type 2 diabetes, you have congenital malformations when your babies are born. You have rare diseases, whatever. And that's usually where they go in, and that's how they convince people, like, we're going to help you, right? And they don't really explain the legal landscape or the informed consent landscape very well. And so people just hear, we're going to get help. We're poor. We need a hospital. You guys are going to help, right? And then they usually don't deliver on those things because that's not their job to deliver on those things. They're like, well, we're going to collect the data and then the US will catch up and give you something, right? So that's how that swindle works. But the other thing is, unfortunately, people in your profession, archaeology and history, they know where to go looking, right? So with the Amish, they already knew that this particular gene had variation in northeastern Germany. But it had, because they evolved and they're different now than they were way back then, it wasn't in high frequency. And they're like, where can we find people who are from there but are sort of stuck in time? Oh, the Amish, because the Amish came over here 325 years ago from Germany. And because of their religion, they only mate with each other, nobody else, right? So they're stuck in time, and you're going to have this enhancement of that gene because they're only mating with each other. So it's people now, scientists have learned, it's like, oh, archaeologists and historians can help us search for these things because they know the history, they know the culture, they know they can tell us where we can start looking, right? And that's the old way. Now with AI, you could breadcrumb like that.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
That's disheartening too. I mean,
disheartening. That's the word I was looking for. That's disheartening. God damn. Well, you'd spoken about chocolate, right? And it made me think, I'm sure they're not only going to try to take the material item, right, in an extractive sense, but then they're also going to be extracting the labor of all the people, because I don't know if you've been around a lot of cacao farmers, but that is some freaking intense labor. Like when I was working in Belize, there was this point where we were out in the middle of the jungle and we're hiking, and they have these constructions. They call them ranchos, right? And it's like one of the few Spanish words I've ever heard said in Belize, because they all speak English there, or they speak Mopan or Quechua or Yucateco in the north. But they have these structures. They're these outdoor structures. They're open structures. So it's got like a thatch roof and then some poles. And that's called the rancho. So we saw this rancho in the distance. And my crew was like, hey, can we take a break under there? You know, because it's hot as hell in Belize. And so we take a little break, and I'm looking around, and you could tell it's being utilized as a storage place for cacao. And so we take off, and we just come across these men with, they call them burden baskets here. You know, the basket that you use with like a head strap. And these men just come out of the jungle carrying pounds and pounds and pounds of cacao on their backs and their machetes. And that's how they get like the chocolate that you're eating. If it comes from Belize, it's because these Maya men throw on a burden basket and grab their machete and go hiking into the mountain and work all damn day, just physically removing these cacao pods and then processing the pods and pulling out the seeds and then putting the seeds in their basket. And, you know, the seeds are only like this big, a few centimeters, but these baskets are huge, and they're packed to the gills. So I'm sure that these companies like Nestle isn't going out and doing that themselves. They're going to, exploit the labor of these indigenous peoples to extract an indigenous technology and then spread that around the world to enrich themselves. And I'm sure that the people in those communities aren't getting much out of it. You know, I don't even know what they got paid for each. I should have asked like what they get paid for each basket that they bring in, but I didn't think of it at the time.
Yeah. And then going back to the colonial period, I'm like, there's always a narrative that goes with that, right? When they're taking something. So like with corn or potatoes or whatever, it wasn't accepted in Europe, right? They're like, oh, this is something from these barbarians across the ocean. It's not worth anything. And then it goes through a different narrative once they get enough of the product in Europe, like turkeys. it goes through another country, and they're like, oh, it didn't come from the Americas. It came from this really sexy, trendy place called Turkey, and we're going to sell you this corn and these potatoes, and they're wonderful. Like, you've never seen anything like this before. And that's kind of what they're doing now with this stuff. It's like, oh, yeah, your resource, whatever it is, your I don't know, name something in Mexico that people don't eat, zapotes or something like that. Like, nobody's going to like those. It's just, we're going to just do some research on it. And they're like, oh, we're taking it over here because we know it has something, and now it's not yours anymore.
Do you think that it would make a difference if the communities themselves were profiting from this resource extraction? Would you think that it would make it okay in a sense because there's a mutual benefit that is like an exchange that is taking place? Or do you see it as, even if the communities are benefiting in some way that is useful to them, do you still see it as a problem because it's a kind of modern form of colonization in a sense?
We'll be back after a quick break.
As the people of Mérida, Yucatan, experience increasing urbanization and gentrification, there are fewer opportunities for diverse and intergenerational communities to engage with local culture. In response, Lignum was created. Lignum is a community-based space located in Mérida where people come together to connect, create, and grow. Since its launch in 2024, Lignum has offered a community seed bank, contemporary Maya language classes and revitalization programs, as well as workshops on screen printing, documentary screenings, and casual gatherings that nourish both mind and spirit. Most of these workshops are free or donation-based, and they are hosted by indigenous and local experts. At their urban milpa, they practice indigenous science that respects the natural cycles of the region. Lignum is a haven for culture, rest, and resistance. So just check the show notes and click the link marked Support Lignum, and you can make Lignum more welcoming, accessible, and resilient with your small donation. Now, on with the show.
Yeah, I think we have to be smart about it, right? I don't know if you guys know Devon Pena. He was one of my instructors at UW.
I mean, I don't know him personally, but yeah, I know of his work.
Yeah, he said there was this trend. It's like, so first we are honest with them, right? And they didn't do well by us. And then we went through this phase of hiding in plain sight and lying to them. But now we're at the point where they're going to get it. Like, there's no strategy that we can have other than being transparent and claiming it that's going to work for us, right? Because they're a 1,200-pound gorilla. They got all the funding, they got all the research labs, they got all the world banks, they got all the markets. So there's something called the Nagoya Protocol, which the United States, Canada, and Australia have not signed, but they've created this World Monetary Fund for Indigenous people. But again, the people who decide on that board where that money goes when you apply for it are not Native, right? So I was in Colombia, and this Quechua woman goes to the scientist. He's a German scientist at a German nonprofit, and says, "Oh, that plant no longer grows in our territory. Can I have some seeds from that so we can plant it?" And the guy said no. And she goes, "What do you mean no? Like, that's why we're here, is because of the Nagoya Protocol. Like this, we're supposed to get these things back. Like, your company, you took it from us. You're supposed to share it with us." He's like, "No, we got these seeds before the Nagoya Protocol, so they belong to us now."
God damn. And that's not even like a big ask either.
Yeah.
Like, you would think the common sense response to that would be, well, yes, of course. These are your seeds. These are like the ancestral property of your community. Why wouldn't you get them back?
And then they have this thing for the drawdown of the money, because I know a bunch of people in Ecuador and Peru who want to draw down the money. They have these mutually agreed terms that I don't think any indigenous community ever saw. They didn't see the terms, but one of the terms is you can only draw down the money for conservation or restoration, right? And I said, in a room full of indigenous people, I said, so these people can't draw down this money to sue an oil company or sue an agricultural company or sue a mining company. And they're like, no, you can't draw down the money for that. I'm like, so they can only draw down the money for what you say is a good thing. And they're like, yes.
So much for self-determination and autonomy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you even just look at what's happening now in Mexico with mezcal, like that's a huge deal going on there.
Or
And
avocados.
yeah. And these small communities, it's like, yeah, and to the point that Ruben was making, some of these communities are signing on with the larger mezcal manufacturers because they're like, well, shit, they're going to come in and they're going to take it all, so at least if we kind of get our foot in the door. And then with that, you read about, well, that just creates this whole other set of problems, right? Because who's benefiting more and whose land is being used and who signed that contract and, whose maguey plants are going to be processed. Just the farming techniques to where now they're just planting the maguey plants that grow the fastest, which aren't the kind that were traditionally used for like the really good tasting mezcal, because mezcal was a very rare drink and it was used on very rare occasions. But now that it's blown up, they're just monoculture farming, right? These same breeds of maguey plants that grow very quickly, and then they're harvesting them before they're done. They're manufacturing the mezcal and they're shipping it out as quickly as possible and getting that next crop going. And it's causing deforestation. It's destroying the diversity of the biology there. It's destroying the landscape, all just so these fucking rich white celebrities can say they own a mezcal brand.
And denutrifying good soils, but often, like in Michoacan for the avocados, they have them grow, like the native people are like, they have this knowledge, like we don't grow avocados over there because that's bad soil, or we don't grow avocados over there because it causes soil erosion, or we don't grow avocados over there because it wastes water. But the companies are like, no, you're going to grow avocados over there because we told you to. And so not only does it mess up the good soil, but it messes up the bad soil even worse. And so, and they don't listen. They're like, we want to listen to indigenous knowledge when we want to take something. But when the indigenous people actually know how to do this, they're like, nah, we're not listening.
The story is old as time.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking at a paper that you co-wrote with several of your peers from 2024, and it was published in the Journal of what's it called? Diabetologia? Diabetologia. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
And it's called Scientists and Scientific Journals Should Adhere to Ethical Standards for the Use and Reporting of Data from Indigenous People, which speaks directly to what we're just talking about, right? And so there's many things. I don't know how many of these things we can cover in today's discussion, but I wanted to start off maybe if you could speak a little bit to this idea of like just checking a box, right? An ethical checkbox. So the paper looks at research that was done through the lens of the truth and reconciliation philosophical idea, activist idea, right? The truth means owning up to past harms and in the name of science, and reconciliation means giving indigenous communities sovereign control over their own data, right? And so what I was thinking about is in more practical sense, in everyday sense, what does reconciliation mean? And what does that actually look like in terms of the research and the research lab? How does that work? And how do we make sure that partnering with an indigenous community, for instance, becomes a deep, meaningful collaboration rather than just a tokenistic checkbox, right? That someone ticks off so that they can exercise their own sovereignty, and also for the ethic board to say, yeah, we've done something that is beneficial to indigenous people, right? So how do we straddle that line there?
Again, I'm going to ask you brothers to help me out, because this is the fight I've been fighting since 2007. Let's step back to what Kurly was just talking about. So the same fight that we have as Chicanos trying to detribalized, disconnected indigenous people, whatever, that same fight is happening in this regard. So depending on how you count, I would say that Mexico had 3 major wars to get rid of the Spanish control, right? But then the last one with Zapata and Pancho Villa, it only lasted 2 years before what happened. They sent in guns, lawyers, and money, right? So whatever wins we have, we are always outfoxed by more money, more guns, and more lawyers coming from someplace else, right? And so with the legal agreement, like Kurly was just talking about, they bury stuff in there that we don't know about. And so that's what Native Bio is trying to do, is try to uncover all of those ways that they renege on their treaties or their contracts or whatever. And so the latest one is, if they do give you profit sharing, they bury the books so that there is no profit. They're like, it's all debt. We don't have anything to share with you. So now the new thing that we've been clued into by other people is like, don't ask for profit sharing, ask for revenue sharing. Whatever their total income for the year, you get 10%. So they can't do that song and dance where, oh, we didn't make any profit. So with Truth and Reconciliation right now, Canada is trying to dance their way out of this. You know, they had the former Pope repudiate but not rescind the doctrine of discovery, right? And so now with this Truth and Reconciliation stuff over these biological resources, they are trying to compete with the United States right now with their own version of the big, beautiful bill called Bill C-5. And they tried to pass it without First Nations consultation. So up there, it's a law. They have to consult, negotiate, and then tribes have to give consent before they move forward. They were trying to get out of it. The tribes got wind of it at the last minute and took that little piece out. But since then, which was like last September, the tribes have been trying to hold their feet to the fire. Now Alberta, I don't know if you've been paying attention, the Alberta premier has been fighting with the first Indigenous premier of Manitoba. It's like, she's like, we're going to do this by referendum. We're going to just say we don't have to listen to First Nations by referendum. He's like, that's not how the law works. This is a nation-to-nation consultation between First Nations and the federal government of Canada, not the province of Canada. You can't get the people to decide to neglect First Nations authority over these resources, whether it's timber, water, human DNA. And but you know, people do these things. They try them in the court of public opinion. And usually that's how they win these things, because tribes don't have the legal or financial wherewithal to fight these battles. They certainly don't have a program like this podcast to say, you know what's really going on? You know what they're really trying to take from us? And so that's kind of what Native Bio is doing, is trying to uncover all of these little ways that they win these fights.
So it's just like a really sick game to play, especially when you're doing it against Indigenous communities and Native peoples in regards to their resources and their ways of life. You know, like you're fucking with people. It's not just dollars and cents. You're messing with people who were here way before your country was ever here, and will be here way after these countries are long gone. But they treat us with absolute zero fucking respect.
And that's the other swindle, right? So in Canada, they're getting, by doing these emotional arguments, like you're saving these babies from this rare disease, or you're saving your grandma from breast cancer. So now it's getting the tribes to fight. It's like, I don't want to participate because I could see what's going to happen. The other ones are like, I want to participate because I want the dollars and I believe that this promise they're going to cure cancer or whatever. So now the tribes are fighting. And now with us in North America, they know that not only are our plant medicines pretty homogenous across the continent, but our DNA, our human DNA, is pretty homogenous across the continent. So like, okay, you guys say no, so we're going to go get this from undocumented Mexicans because they're going to get deported anyway. We'll take their DNA and then we have it forever. And we don't need First Nations or American Indian DNA because we got it from all these people in detention.
And so they're doing that. They're collecting DNA from people that are being held in the detention centers.
Yeah.
That's so fucked.
Well, I mean, in a related note, like, what do you do, for instance, like if you have a tribe that gave consent for something 30 years ago, whether it's some kind of data extraction, DNA, genetics, and now the technology has evolved. And so now we have the AI and we have new leadership in place and everything's changing. And it's not just like changing, like, and then it stops. Like it's ongoing. It's a continuous change that's evolving, right? So if, say, a tribe that gave stuff away in some kind of agreement 30 years ago do they have some kind of recourse now that the data and the technology has evolved? And like, should modern scientists, for instance, have some kind of way to handle this as legacy data instead of saying, okay, this is new, but it's legacy, but we can grandfather it into the new and emerging policies and the new and emerging ways of analyzing and extracting the data. So how are tribes navigating this?
Not well. So there's three things. There's hyper individualization of consent, over reliance on informed consent, and this thing called secondary data use. So me and my colleagues have been screaming about this since the 90s, especially with the tribes in the Southwest, the different O'odham nations, Pima, commonly known as Pima. They started being sampled back in 1967 because they wanted to get recognized as a federally recognized tribe. And so anthropologists were down there and historians were down there like, are these actually Mexicans? Are these Indians? Blah, blah, blah. And then it moved into sort of the public health area, testing for childhood diseases, influenza, measles, all that kind of stuff. And then it moved into the current sort of biomedical and genetic research. So it's like one of the biggest data sets for Indigenous people in the Americas, right? And they have such a high turnover rate in their tribal council and they don't remember what they consented to. And so, back in the 90s, we're like, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem in the future real quick because the tribe doesn't know that not only did they over rely on informed consent of just the individuals and rather than tribal approval, but there's this secondary data use thing, which back before 2011 said you can only use data a second time if it's in line with the original consent and has to do with the original project. But after 2011, they changed all of that. The federal government said, we can keep dead people in the data set. You used to have to get rid of dead people. If it's for an asthma study, you can use that same data for cancer. And now anybody can have access to it. Like all the rules changed in 2011. The tribe doesn't know that. Tribes don't know that. So we knew that this was going to be a problem a long time ago, but the United States, even now in the All of Us program with Native American samples, say if they're on the reservation or they mention their tribal affiliation, we cannot collect their data. But if they come off to go to Chicago or Los Angeles or Oklahoma City, they're fair game because they're not in tribal jurisdiction anymore. And the only thing that we're going to do is not ask them what tribe they're from. And that'll make everything square. It doesn't, because once you're in the program, they give you another form. It says a medical of release of information, so they can get all your medical records. And guess what it says in your medical records?
Right. I was just going to say
your tribal affiliation.
Right.
So there's all these little games they play, and tribes, that's why I keep saying in terms of our movement, Indigenous data sovereignty or Indigenous whatever, the First Nations of Canada and the United States have a recognized sovereignty, their own legal jurisdiction, and all this immense power, but they don't have the numbers. We have the numbers. Depending on how you count, there's either the official number is 45 million Indigenous people left in Latin America. But if you go back to like 1996 or so, it's more like 250 million people left in Latin America. So there's only 638 million people in Latin America. I'm sure if you did a better count or census the way that we would do it, it's like, actually, there's 600 million Indigenous people.
I was going to say, there's a lot more than that.
Yeah. But so that's what we need to get the message out there. We need to say, like Kurly said, we're here first. We're going to be here after. All the stuff that you guys are making money on and have made money on in the past is ours.
So theoretically, if a tribe wanted to sue an entity, whether it's the government or it's some kind of company that's come in and extracted DNA or other resources, and they say one thing, but then they end up doing something else, they could do so, but it's going to take a lot of time and money and effort. And so most tribes don't have those kinds of resources. So it's not that they don't have a recourse to do so. It's just that it's not viable for any individual tribe to really do that. So is it the case then that, for instance, I don't know if this is true, but that your organization or something similar that exists out there could be like a way, like a venue, some kind of mechanism that can be employed for that purpose if necessary, given the funds and given the resources available.
Yeah. So the last 2 or 3 weeks, so I was in, like I said, I was in Ottawa, Canada. I was in Cleveland for the Evolutionary Biology Conference. And then I had some non-native medical students here in person. In each of those cases, I made people cry. And this is what I keep telling them, like, you can't do this through a legal mechanism. You can't do this through a treaty. What you have to do is have a bunch of scientists with the right ethos and mindset and heart not to do these things, right? So if we're developing the technologies, whatever it is, nuclear power, genomic technology, AI, we're the ones building it. The scientists are, right? Why do we have to submit to politicians and businessmen if we're the ones creating it? We have to create an ethos in academia and scientists to say, we're not going to do crappy things to people. We're not going to do that to people. And that's what I've been pitching the last month or so. It's like, yeah, we can do something if we just kind of band together. But to your point, there are two stories, Havasupai versus the border regions of Arizona. And my opinion is that neither side wanted to give in, right? They didn't want to lose that. So they settled out of court, right? So the Havasupai were all sequenced for type 2 diabetes. Arizona State University's researchers and graduate students started doing Bering Strait stuff. They started doing schizophrenia, and they started doing inbreeding studies. The tribe found out, they got mad, they sued for $7.5 million. Took 2004, 2010, 6 years to adjudicate that. They settled out of court for a tenth of that, like $750,000. It wasn't much.
Terrible.
And the researchers didn't really get punished at all. They complained that they got punished, but they all went off to go to different universities and have nice careers and are sitting on a beach right now. They weren't, but they complained, those Indians, they ruined my career. I'm like, no, they didn't. You're fine. Anyway, both sides, the way it works in the United States is if one tribe loses sovereignty, they all lose sovereignty. So tribes are really careful when they do lawsuits because they know that if they lose it for all 570.
That's the precedent. Yeah.
Yeah, 576 tribes. And the United States is the same thing. If the tribe wins, that means we've given all of these tribes new sovereignty that we don't want to give them. So they settled out of court. But the Tulalip tribe in Washington State back in 2022 did their own research on a biomolecule, and they couldn't finish it, so they gave it to Stanford and said, here's $10 million, here's the molecule, finish it for us. And again, one of these wrinkles of legal language and policy is Stanford decided to take that molecule, create a synthetic version, and then use it under a synthetic patent license. The tribe found out about it and said, you can't do that. That's still our
underhanded, man.
Yeah. So they sued them. Yeah, they had the right to sue them because it was the tribe. They're rich, right? The tribe has a lot of money. We gave you $10 million to do this. You're a vendor. We're the customer. You're the vendor. You do it for us. We're in charge. Stanford's like, nah, you're not in charge. You're just a bunch of Indians. So they sued them, and then they settled out of court for some undisclosed amount, but it's got to be a lot of money because everybody I know was trying to find out how much they settled for. And usually these things are public, like with Havasupai, but in this case, they're like, nobody say nothing.
That's wild. That's really disheartening to hear all this.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of our interview with Joseph Yracheta. We hope you're enjoying it so far, and part 2 will be released next week, unless you are a Patreon supporter, in which case you already have access to the interview in its entirety. So, if you would like to support the show, please consider becoming a Patreon member. You'll get ad-free episodes, early episode releases, bonus content, and access to our Discord server. Just go to talesfromaztlantis.com and sign up as a Patreon supporter. And until next time, remember, the truth is like medicine. It doesn't always taste good, but it is always good for you. Timo Hitase. If you've ever wanted to experience the ancient Maya world for yourself, well, I have an incredible opportunity for you, because Tales from Aztlantis is teaming up with the fine folks at the Skeptoid podcast to bring you the mysteries of the Maya adventure. This December, I will be joining Skeptoid Adventures as your guide for the mysteries of the Maya. We're going to travel through the Yucatan, exploring remarkable archaeological sites, uncovering the real history behind the Maya civilization, and separating fact from fiction along the way. Together, we'll examine the archaeology, history, and culture of one of the world's greatest civilizations through the lens of evidence, not sensationalism. To reserve your spot, all you need is a fully refundable $500 deposit. Your deposit is refundable through August 1st, so you can reserve your place with confidence. After August 1st, deposits become non-refundable. Even better, if you heard about the trip from the Tales from Aztlantis podcast, be sure to use the promo code Kurly in the How Did You Hear About This Adventure field when you sign up, and you will get a $200 discount. And if you're feeling extra adventurous, you can combine the Maya adventure with the New Orleans escapade and receive $500 off when you reserve both trips. Just visit skeptoid.com/adventures to learn more and reserve your spot. I hope that you will join me this December as we explore the mysteries of the Maya together.